So here we are. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. I'll be today's host, and with us we have Debra Cohen and Henry Pietras, both visitors to the show, talking about the candidate that they've decided to donate a fair amount of their time for in exchange for the satisfaction of donating their time. For a gentleman by the name of Bernie Sanders, who's a candidate for president. What's on the topic for today? Don't everybody speak at once.
Personally, I think one of the most important things we should be talking about today are ways that people can get involved to support Bernie.
Sure, we've got a couple primaries, a primary and a caucus coming up,
right.
And we've got stuff coming up in Connecticut before a long time. It's not that far off in the distant future now, but
right.
Go ahead.
Well, two important things that we should be focusing on right now are phone banking and canvassing up in New Hampshire. And in a little bit, I'll share some specific information about an effort we're trying to put together for next Saturday.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I've been up to New Hampshire in the past for candidates, and it's. I don't like phone banking personally because when you can't see someone's face, it's harder to communicate with them. And I've phone banked to other states, and it's kind of like it should be more. I think more personal than that. But going door to door is kind of fun because you're only going to find maybe 10 or 15 or 20% of the people whose doors you knock on actually home.
Right.
But you get some good conversations, and it's always a lot of fun to connect with people and share ideas and compare and contrast your thoughts about different political topics. So, Henry, you've been having a get together now for what, 7, 8, 9 weeks now at Panera Bread in Brookfield.
Yes.
And what's going on there? You having some nice discussions, some fun things going on?
Well, the discussions are my reward, but we're all talking about how we can help Bernie. We're very grassroots. We are beginners in this space, but we're very passionate about what he has to offer. I think personally, Bernie is special, and I think he's deserving of our efforts to learn about his platform as well as our efforts to help him succeed. We're trying to connect people, whoever comes to our breakfast at Panera. It's every Saturday morning from 8 to 10.
It's on Federal Road in Brookfield, yep.
And no one is expected to stay there for 2 hours, but any information they need we'll provide, including voter registration, as well as any events that people want to hold. We'll assist and help out.
So you just stop in and get involved in the conversation, have a bite to eat, and in and out as time permits for you.
Yep. Yes.
So pretty unstructured.
Very unstructured, but we've had, even though it's only 8 to 10, we've had conversations till past noon. So
That's nice.
It's very nice. I mean, it's meeting some wonderful people who really are interested in doing.
So voter registration, Deb.
Yes, sir.
Voter registration and phone banking and door-to-door. You said this is the first time you've done anything like this.
This is the first time I have ever been out there on the street working for a candidate.
Well, I guess you have to have somebody
Absolutely.
that you feel fairly comfortable with and fairly passionate about what they have to say. But Bernie's been, I've known of Bernie for decades, and he's always been pretty much the same guy. He's easygoing. His words are strong, but his heart is good. And what have you been doing? Now you're part of the one of the core group in Connecticut on the website. And what's the website in Connecticut for Bernie?
It's BernieSandersConnecticut.com.
Is that CT or Connecticut spelled out?
CT.
Okay.
CT. And we are one of many groups out there. Hopefully we are all working together. Everybody's got their own style. Every group has their own base of people, from whom they can draw support. Some of the things that we've been doing a lot lately includes social mixers, very much like what you were describing as the breakfast. We've been doing honkin' waves. There are some folks who think that honk and waves aren't as important because we're not actually getting people to sign on, like to a volunteer list. My personal feeling is that it's a really good tool for bringing his name to the attention of people who might still not know who he is. I am amazed at how many people answer the question, tell me what you know about Bernie Sanders, with, who's Bernie Sanders? It makes me crazy.
It's just amazing. People don't tend to be engaged politically for the most part anyway, but certainly, coming up on an election year, people are very slow to actually get engaged with the issues and with the candidates, except the ones that we get, they get talked about ad nauseum, like I forget his name, the guy that's crazy.
Trump.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
He who shall not be mentioned.
I'm so tired of hearing him talked about that I don't even want to think about him. He's just, he displays to me all the horrible things in America that a very small but very vocal minority stand up and cheer and wave about. It's pretty.
I used to think that he was an embarrassment. But since the early days of his candidacy, I think it has moved so far beyond an embarrassment. It's a real danger.
Well, people listen to voices of authority, and he's a voice of authority because of his positioning within the upper echelons of the Republican Party. But people listen to voices of authority, and sometimes they act on other people's words. They feel that that this gives me carte blanche to do horrific acts, and we've seen a lot of horrific acts committed, and there's a huge chasm between we as Americans in a lot of cases, and folks can get pretty ugly with when they lean on
carried away.
Yeah, carried away. Sure, yeah. So up to New Hampshire for phone banking, up to New Hampshire for door to door. Have we been having? I know I've been to one debate party, and I watched it once. But are there any local debate parties coming up? I know we've got a debate coming up fairly soon.
19th.
Next Saturday.
Next Saturday, okay.
And one of the things that the national campaign is hoping for is to get lots of people, as many people as possible, up to Manchester, New Hampshire next Saturday to do canvassing, and then to kind of stay and be part of a visible group of people who are there to watch the campaign from Manchester.
Yeah, I've been outside. I think it was St. Anselm's College was the one that I've been outside a couple times doing visibility for candidates, and it's an opportunity to actually carry on conversation with folks from the other groups, and surprisingly enough, maybe find some common ground. I know on Progressive Soup we've had a lot of folks who are truly libertarians on the show. We find a lot of good common ground against wiretapping and against spying on Americans and things of that nature, that libertarians and liberals have a very strong common ground on, amongst other things, the war on drugs being a failure. It's another area that there's good common ground. But when you're in discussion with folks that you don't necessarily agree with, how does that work out?
Well, we do have a lot of conversations like that. I think the number one thing is to be respectful. And then, I'm a database guy, so, show me your evidence. Yeah. If you deny climate change, for instance, show me your evidence. I mean, if you deny it, then effectively you're going against, the majority, a huge majority of the scientists. And if you deny it, you're also saying to me that you really don't know how science works. And, because it's a process, people who cook data or provide false information will be outed, and they'll be outed out of their community. Because after all, science, simple definition of science, is the process for learning.
Absolutely, and questioning.
It's a routine, and it's exposed to everyone to see what was done. You can take the experiment and review it or duplicate it to see whether or not you agree with it. So it's totally open-ended. And science, by the way, also allows for being wrong. Okay, because believe it or not, if you're wrong, you've learned something. So now you move in a slightly different direction.
Yeah,
so
I guess there are no absolutes, but the scientific community is pretty close to 100%.
Well, it's 97, okay, but the media presents as if the arguments were equivalent, and that's wrong.
They create that false equivalency.
Okay, just because somebody has a position, that the Earth is flat, and everybody else believes that the Earth is round. Okay, we're making it the same level of argument and validity.
And there are people out there that believe the Earth is flat, no doubt. It's you have to wonder, but then again, like you say, they create they give the folks that are on the flat Earth side of the equation equal time to discuss and to take a stand for their point of view.
David, let me just piggyback on what Debra was saying, and that for me, Bernie is also I'm a first-time person involved in politics. I've never been before. I've never donated or never spent any time investing in a campaign. But for me, I keep saying Bernie is special, but I believe that Bernie will work for all of us, okay? Whereas anyone else, pick anyone you like, will work for special interests.
Right. I think that's at the very heart of why most of us are working for him. He's not corporate. He is not going to owe allegiance to anybody who has given millions of dollars to his campaign. He's been consistent for more than 30 years of calling people out for those very behaviors that he will not support. So, I totally agree with you.
Thank you.
And I'm not really surprised. I'm not really surprised that he's been as successful as he has, because I think that not just within the Democratic Party, but within America, I think there's a groundswell of support for the things he talks about.
Well, one thing that I see in Bernie is, what we're trying to instill in education, which is to be critical thinkers. And I see Bernie as a critical thinker. He's data-based. He does what businesses do, which is look at process and look at industry practices to see where they can improve and save money. Bernie is trying to do that same thing for governance. Okay, and he's, to explain the socialist label, he's simply saying, let's look at other countries who've solved these problems that we're facing, and maybe we can learn something from them. Rather than trying to invent everything from scratch, let's piggyback on what other people have done and maybe, take it in a slightly different direction or improve on it.
Yeah, question other strategies that have been successful, strategies that have been not successful, and try to pick and choose amongst the best of them.
Yeah, so it's not it's not new news. Okay, businesses do this. Okay, so if he says let's look at socialist countries, it's fine with me. I mean, a lot of the socialist countries have healthcare solved, for instance, and they're trying to deal with climate change far better than we are. Germany, for instance, is at times last year they had 75% of their energy on one day come in from clean energy sources. Okay,
and they're solar, aren't they?
They're mostly solar and wind. Okay, but they're also committed to phasing out nuclear, for instance. Because of the Fukushima disaster.
That's always been a thing that people have never come up with a reasonable way of disposing of nuclear waste. It's just it's going to be there for tens of thousands of years. Yeah. In some cases, depending upon what the substance is, longer than that, and there's no getting around it.
Yeah, I think also we're also getting kind of stuck in conventional solutions, because ultimately the solution is really to duplicate what happens in the sun, which is pretty much pollution free. So our national labs, there's 4 of them, are pushing or learning about fusion and trying to make it a sustainable reaction. But until we transition to that, we need to do other options in terms of generating electricity cleanly. So we're going to transition from what we currently have to something better.
I imagine probably they had this same kind of the same kind of fighting going on when they were transitioning from coming into the industrial age and transitioning into fossil fuels. And in fact, our country had something in place, and unfortunately they still do, called the oil depletion allowance, to give oil companies a leg up in developing technologies using oil and other fossil fuels. And for some reason, these companies still get this oil depletion allowance, although they're doing quite well and don't actually need any government largesse, any government assistance, corporate welfare. But we've got our renewable energy, which gets some assistance from federal funds, and in a constant battle to hold on to those that assistance to get people transited to.
Well, there's vested interests that want to continue milking the same cow. The reality is that we need to move on. While we're holding on to using existing technologies, we need to move forward on new stuff. And clean energy is just is the next step. Transitioning to electric cars, for instance. The argument against electric cars is that they also pollute. Yes, currently, yes. Okay, they pollute the same as any other car because you have to generate the electricity somehow. Right now we're doing it with dirty fuels. But in time, as we transition to cleaner stuff, all of those issues do go away. In time. Argument against climate change, the same script that the tobacco companies played years ago. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, it's like I worked for a tobacco company. I know the argument. I'm well aware of it, and I just find I could write out the script right now based on what we've seen with tobacco. Okay, against climate change.
I was listening to a report on NPR on my way over here this afternoon, and they were interviewing a young man who's working in West Virginia, in coal country.
National Public Radio, go ahead, yeah.
And he was talking about a program that he is trying to get started there. When we talk about removing ourselves from old ways of producing energy, we're also talking about putting lots of people out of work, changing lives in other ways that we also need to pay attention to. And he's got this wonderful program going for reusing old materials, finding new purposes for the sites where mountaintop removal has taken place, training people to do those jobs. So I think that we do have the very real possibility of being creative.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens.
That's what's most necessary.
It's amazing what happens when many people get into an area of concern. Look at what happened with computers. I mean, initially, if you wanted a computer, you had to have half your house to put on a mainframe or a mini computer. Okay, as the microcomputers came online, more and more people got involved. And look at just since 1980, look where we are in computers 35 years later. That's my business. I see the the pattern. If you're interested in clean energy, we can do the same thing if we have the national will. And the the priority to focus on it. By the way, space program. If it were left up to the private industry, not big government, okay, because we need big government, where do you think we would be? Would we be on the moon today? I don't think so.
It's a good question.
Because there's no money in it. Okay, we need big government for the big stuff. And the big stuff for clean energy is doing the mission to the moon 100 times over, if not more.
Well, there have been a lot of jobs. I know people will say, well, if this happens, then there'll be job loss. But then again, in Connecticut, right here, we have a lot of folks that are working in the area of solar energy now that take the information to households and check and see what type of if they have enough sunlight hitting their roof to make it, because if you've got big trees right in front of your house, it's not very efficient. But as long as you've got access to sunlight on your roof, you can save a lot of money. You can really, in fact, power your house on sunlight, and that's created a lot of jobs, not only in the people that have gone out there to promote it and sell it, but the folks that are doing the work to installation of solar panels, and it's created a lot of very good paying jobs.
I'll say a couple of things about that. One, this is a passion of mine. I actually taught workshops on clean energy at Naugatuck College, and I've been tracking it since the early '80s. The one thing that really puzzles me is we have this big business or businesses looking for opportunities. If you really look at it and you're really passionate, you look at this, and saving our planet is a business opportunity. Okay, generating electricity in a clean manner is a business opportunity. Okay, and for some reason it's like solar is no good because it's too expensive. And my question about solar being too expensive is, what are your assumptions? Is it just the price of gas at the pump, or does that include all those other things that are harmful, like damaging our planet, polluting our air, polluting our soil? Is that number factored in?
Waste disposal of the byproducts of...
And I don't believe so. The only place I know of that actually tried to put a number around that was the Academy of Arts and Sciences, and a friend of mine is the president.
Yeah.
And that document was put together by a whole bunch of Nobel laureates. And but even that wasn't accurate, simply because their data was close to 10 years old. And since then, the price of a watt of energy has gone from $5 an hour on $5 per watt on a solar panel to under 70 cents a watt. Okay.
So a lot more efficient as time has gone on.
Well, not efficient, cheaper. The efficiency is about the same.
Oh, okay.
Okay. The efficiency on solar panels is about 15 to 20%. By the way, I'm a fan. I actually last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, I visited a friend who walks and talks this stuff in Massachusetts. He has a house that's a showcase. Okay, I was expecting to talk with him for an hour, and we spoke for 5. Regardless, okay, solar hot water is really your best investment because it's 80% efficient. Okay, and nobody wants to do it simply because it's too much work, because you have to integrate it into the existing heating system in your house. But that's your best investment and quickest return. It's under 3 years. I've actually done one with a friend of mine.
On the real estate side, and just a quick reminder, I'm a real estate professional. On the real estate side, a lot of new communities are integrating solar into new construction. That's the best time to do it.
They should.
And from the viewpoint of changes, I think some of the changes required to support clean energy need to happen right at before even building a home. Things like house orientation. I could have strangled my contractor, okay? Because from the viewpoint of solar, it's completely wrong. Okay, instead of facing more or less south, actually for this area it's 193 degrees by the compass. It faces west and east, okay, which is totally opposite of what it should have been. So and there was enough land to orient the house anywhere they wanted.
Morning sun and afternoon sun.
Okay, so I think a lot of that stuff needs to bubble into requirements for building, for new construction.
When was your house built?
1988.
My house was built in 1905. In my next life, I will have a house that is not surrounded by trees from every possible angle. I will have a house with a roof line that is going in the right direction. But you know, some of us simply can't do the solar route. But I think we can all support it wherever it's possible.
We can.
And there are so many other things that we can be doing to support alternative energy.
We can still do it. It's just that instead of putting it on the roof, you might have to put it, if possible, on the ground or on a shed or an extra building someplace.
Right.
I've seen people trim
I've
seen people trim the tops of trees down, pare them down somewhat, so you have a better angle.
There's an instrument called the Solar Pathfinder, and you put that on your roof, and you can figure out throughout all the seasons where the shading is, and they'll the company that comes in and does that analysis will tell you where you need to, if you need to cut trees and so on. So I'm a hands-on guy. Okay, I love this stuff. I've done it, and I've actually installed a solar hot water system with a friend of mine. And it's still working 5 years later, beautifully.
Excellent.
That's probably at this point beyond the life expectancy of a lot of conventional hot water heaters.
Well, these systems are expected to last 25 years. The payback on hot water is under 3 years. Okay, including your federal and state rebates.
Yep.
And then after that, it's free hot water, except maybe a little maintenance and a little electricity. So, my friend offsets 400 gallons of fuel oil that he doesn't burn every year to heat hot water.
That's
energy is free.
Sizable. Yeah. The planet's been using solar energy since there's been the planet. We've been the plants live off of it. It seems to work pretty well for plants, and plants are the reason why we're here, not for plants.
Yeah, to get back on Bernie, Bernie has a program about doing clean solar power for low-income people. He actually announced that recently, so he's pushing it as well.
You need to be the industry spokesperson for solar.
It's an interest. I love it.
Passion about it.
I love it. Yeah, well, Bernie is consistent with that, so that's why I support Bernie.
Well, he's consistent on everything.
Yes, I agree.
Which is why he's got my support.
And for those folks who are listening, please look at feeltheburn.org for his issues. I know that labeling people is really, really easy, but as citizens, I think we need to invest the time to see what he's about and what he stands for. Odds are that 70% of what he's talking about you'll agree with.
Read, listen, question. Always question, but in the process of questioning, I think you'll be pretty comfortable with the things he talks about.
One of the things I suggested to you earlier in another conversation was, because you just mentioned labels, I think it's really interesting to think about having conversations with people without our knowing what their political label is. Because if we start out only thinking, this is a person with whom I can share ideas, we're going to get a lot further than if we say, this person is a Republican, I just can't deal with that.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to be here tomorrow, noon 30, again, Thursday, tonight being Wednesday. We're going to be back and continue the discussion. I'm David Stevenson, Henry Pietras, Deb Cohen, and this has been Progressive Soup, and we're just going to continue the conversation while we fade out.